I'm going to turn it over to Rabbi Sidney Rubenstein, who is going to take the reins of being host, and Chag Sameach.
Chag Sameach, everyone. I'm Rabbi Sidney Rubenstein. I'm speaking to you from Shreveport, Louisiana. I would love to introduce Rabbis Ellen Wolintz Fields and Margie Cella. Rabbi Ellen S. Wolintz Fields proudly serves as the first rabbi in the position of executive director of the Women's League for Conservative Judaism, a role that she dreamt of holding. The ability to spearhead the organization, which for over 100 years has been engaging, enriching, and empowering conservative Jewish women. Rabbi Margie Cella is a second career rabbi ordained in 2019 at JTS, who is currently involved in teaching, lecturing, and writing. Together, they'll be teaching us, what does Pirkei Avot teach us in the time of COVID?
Thank you very much for that introduction. And you're probably, those who might not know us, wondering, how did we get paired together? Because Rabbi Margie Cella is in her first month of work at Women's League for Conservative Judaism as our part-time educational programming coordinator. So it's really an honor and a privilege to be able to share this platform with her today. Good to see you. And just a short origin of how we came to this idea that many of our sisters who are watching today, hello to all of our sisters from Women's League for Conservative Judaism, we all love you. And I want to thank you for being here, for being one of the partners for the Tikkun today. I want to thank the Rabbinical Assembly and all of our sponsors and partners, and especially my dear friend, Rabbi Ilana Garber, who put this all together, and Flow Video. And of course, we're praying for Israel. So how did we come to this idea? So it originates on March 15th, 2020, when Women's League for Conservative Judaism began meeting every day for a half hour, 45 minutes, to give our women across time zones the opportunity to say Kaddish. That's how it started, but we needed more than that. So we started by studying a psalm, and then we increased it by singing Mishaberach, and it became really a makom, a place that was a holy place. But then we finished all 150 Psalms. I said, what are we going to do now? So now we read the Psalm of the day, and before that, the Mishaberach we sing, and we've been teaching and learning a teaching, just one, of Pirkei Avot every day. It used to be Sunday through Friday when we first started. Now it's Monday through Friday. Rabbi Cella has been teaching on Mondays. I teach during the week. And we have all of our sisters from Women's League who teach as well. So as I was preparing the Pirkei Avot teachings, each time, of course, I wanted to see how it related to life today, how what we're learning is relevant. And of course, Pirkei Avot is relevant to everything in the ethics of our ancestors. But there was really a theme that went through many of the teachings to show how we can group it together to teach us life lessons of the world we're living in today. So we're going to start with some of those life lessons about humility and morality. And Rabbi Cella will begin with some of those teachings from Pirkei Avot that really teach about how we have learned to be humble and realize our morality in this time. So Rabbi Cella will begin with teaching 419.
Thank you, Rabbi Wolintz Fields, and I'm very happy to be studying with everyone here today. I do want to mention before we start that if you have downloaded the materials, and if you look at our slides, the Hebrew is a little bit discombobulated on some of the slides. What you will see on the screen will be correct, but if you're trying to follow along on the slides, you may be a little bit confused. So we'll be reading from what we see on the screen. So if I could have the first slide for Pirkei Avot 419. What does Pirkei Avot teach us in the time of COVID? Okay, next slide, please. Humility and mortality is the first section. Next slide. Pirkei Avot 419. Rabbi Yanai Omer, Ein biadenu lo mishalvat harashaim va'af lo miyusurei hatzadikim. Rabbi Yanai said, it is not in our hands to explain the reason either of the security of the wicked or even of the afflictions of the righteous. COVID is a disease whose symptoms are many and varied. We have all known people who have contracted COVID. Some have little or no symptoms at all, Some get sick but recover. Some have lingering effects, and many have died. Some did everything right, wearing a mask, socially distancing, and some have flaunted the rules. It is impossible to explain why some are affected and some are not, why some die and some do not. It defies explanation. While we live and struggle with this internal conflict, and specifically because we live with this unresolved conflict, it remains possible to believe, as Rabbi Gordon Tucker has said, in a life devoted to Torah. That is something we do have control over. Next slide, please. Pirkei Avot 3:1. Akavia ben Mahalalel Omer, Histakel b'shlosha devarim v'i ata ba lidei avera. Da me'ain bata ula'an ata holech v'lifnei mi ata atid l'tein din v'cheshbon. Ma'ain bata mitipa serucha ula'an ata holech limkom afar rima v'tolea. V'lifnei mi ata atid l'tein din v'cheshbon. Lifnei melech malchei hamlachim hakadosh baruch hu. Akavia ben Mahalalel liked to say, consider these three things, and you will not fall into transgressions. Know from where you come and where you are going, and before whom you are destined to give an account and reckoning. From where do you come? From a putrid drop. Where are you going? To a place of dust, of worm and of maggot. Before whom you are destined to give an account and reckoning? Before the sovereign of the sovereigns of sovereigns, the blessed Holy One. More than any other phenomenon in recent memory, COVID has made us aware of our own mortality. From the moment we are born, we all live with the knowledge that we will one day die, and that in death, we will all be equal. Living each day with the knowledge that we are one day closer to death can be a scary thought. That awareness has been brought home to us very clearly by this pandemic. COVID doesn't care who you are or what you do with your life, but Hashem does. The beginning and the end of our lives are unimportant. What matters is what we do with the in-between. And we must live our lives with the awareness that we will one day have to give an accounting to the Kadosh Baruch Hu for how we have used our time, including and especially during this past year. Next slide. Pirkei Avot 4:4. Rabbi Levitas Ish Yavneh Omer, Me'od me'od heve shafal ruach shetikva enosh rima. Rabbi Levitas of Yavneh liked to say, be very, very humble of spirit, for the ultimate hope of humankind is the worm. Recognizing that the same ultimate fate awaits us all should cause us to be very, very humble. The repetition of the word me'od in the Hebrew text comes to impart to us the urgency of this task. Ruvain Bulka, in his book, Chapters of the Sages, says, a halfway measure in humility is not sufficient. COVID has made us all extremely aware of our mortality and just how fragile and temporary life can be. Fostering a sense of humility in oneself leads to a deeper understanding of and appreciation for the lives of others. COVID has shown us to put the needs of others ahead of our own. The decision to wear a mask, to be socially distant, to get a vaccination, and to continue to do the first two things on that list, even after we've done the third thing on that list, must be based on concern for the welfare of others, even more so than ourselves. Next slide.
Thank you. Thank you, Rabbi Cella. You definitely hit many important points. I was thinking about the poem, The Dash, that you said that what's most important about not the beginning and the end, but what we do in between with our dash, with our life. So one of the things that we do in between with that dash, with our life, affects what other people, how they live as well. So the next group of teachings from Pirkei Avot is how one's behavior affects those around them, how we're all in this together. So ironically, it was before we even started our Torah Fund campaign that we decided Torah Fund, the designated philanthropy of the Women's League for Conservative Judaism, which supports our 5 seminaries, we knew that our theme was going to be biyachad, together. We didn't quite realize how appropriate it was going to be for this year, that we truly are all together in this pandemic, no matter where in the world we're living. And our time together with Women's League was better known as, now our name, Makom B'Yachad, our place together each day for us to be and to celebrate, to learn, and to say Kaddish together. So how indeed does our behavior affect those around us? And we'll look at the Pirkei Avot. So this is probably one of the most well-known teachings in all of Pirkei Avot, taught by Hillel. And if you remember, there's a great scene in Yentl when she's walking and she's reciting this. Hu haya omer, im ein ani li, mi li, uche'ashani la'atzmi, ma'ani, ve'im lo achshav, ematai. He, Hillel, also used to say, if I'm not for myself, then who will be? If I'm only for myself, what am I? And if not now, when? So you can keep the slide up for a little while so we can look at that. And we really got the idea this year, and plus, that we weren't living by ourselves. There was a domino effect on our behavior. And this teaching connects with the next one, even though they're chapters apart in the book of Pirkei Avot. So that if you can switch the slide to the next one, please. The next teaching, Ben Azai Omer, and it's great to see how short the Hebrew is, how long the English is. Heve ratz lemitzvah kala kivach chamura uvorech min ha'avera. Shemitzvah goreret mitzvah va'avera goreret avera. Sechar mitzvah mitzvah usechar avera avera. Ben Azai like to say, run to perform a seemingly trivial commandment as vigorously as you would to a seemingly consequential one, and flee from transgression, for one fulfilled commandment brings another into its wake, just as one transgression brings in its wake. The reward for fulfilling a commandment is the desire to fulfill another commandment, whereas the reward for transgression is the brazenness to commit yet another transgression. So many of us are probably familiar with this idea of mitzvah goreret mitzvah, that one mitzvah, one good deed, leads to another good deed. And one bad deed also leads to another bad deed. And unfortunately, in the time of COVID, we saw a lot of that there was a domino effect. Think about it, what we've all been living through. If one person didn't wear their mask properly and didn't take the right precautions, it then caused others repercussions. So many of us probably know the situation where one person didn't wear their mask, they happened to have COVID, they transmitted it to somebody else, the next person got it, the next person got it, the next person got it. That's why we have contact tracing. That's why if any of you have had the bad experience this year, unfortunately, of having COVID, once you are diagnosed, then the Board of Health calls you constantly. Can you tell that I dealt with it in my own home? And we could trace exactly how it came into our house and who got it from who. And it was truly a domino effect, that just one person didn't do it. And even if you wore your mask properly, you still had the tendency to then contract the COVID. And we were all in it together. No matter how precautious you were, it just happens. But the more precautious one was, the better. And then think about it. Remember those times where the life is a little different now that we have a vaccine, but that our neighbors were out there for each other. If you were going to the store, you hopefully contacted someone and said, did you need something? Do you want me to pick it up for you? Let me call you and do that. There was a chain of phone calls going to people, helping each other. I hope we can continue those good feelings of doing mitzvot for each other and helping each other with that. But we have to not leave our guard. And it really, I think of anything this year, these two teachings in Pirkei Avot so resonated with me that we couldn't just be for ourselves, and we still can't be for ourselves, that we have to think for each other and care about each other, because what I do affects somebody else. That I heard of situations, and I'm sure everyone could relate to this too, where someone wasn't feeling well, they went to school anyway, they went to work anyway, and then they found out, oh, I had COVID. And then it just spread. So we really have to realize that we have the achrayut, the responsibility for the acher, the other, to help each other in this situation. So just two of the teachings in Pirkei Avot that show how our behavior affects what we do and affects somebody else. So now Rabbi Cella will be teaching us the next teaching on the next slide from chapter 3, teaching 19.
Thank you, Rabbi Wolintz. Pirkei Avot, chapter 3:19. Hakol tzafui v'harashut netana uv'tov ha'olam nidon v'hakol lefi rov hama'aseh. Everything is foreseen, yet freedom of choice is granted, and the world is judged with goodness, and everything is in accordance with the preponderance of works. So this teaching presents us with a paradox. We have the teaching that everything is foreseen, that God knows everything that's going to happen. Yet we also know that we've been given free will. We've been given freedom of choice. So when it comes to COVID, there are those who would say, well, if everything is known by God, what difference does it make what I do? If I'm meant to get COVID, I'll get COVID. If I'm meant to die, then I'll die. So does it make a difference if I wear a mask or if I socially distance? Or does it make a difference if I get a vaccination? Or does it make a difference if I hang out with other people? There are those who say, it doesn't make a difference. God knows what's going to happen. So it's very, very fatalistic attitude. On the other hand, there's the other side of the argument. Hashem has given us free will. Even though everything is predetermined, we still have free will. This is the paradox. God has given us the power to choose how we will act. How do we treat those who differ with us? How do we treat the person that we encounter who doesn't want to wear a mask? How do we treat the person we encounter who is reluctant to get a vaccination? And as we prepare to reopen our synagogues, and the CDC guidelines this week have said, if you're vaccinated, you don't need to wear a mask anymore. How do we implement that in our synagogue and take into account the needs and the feelings of all of our congregants? We have a lot of decisions to make going forward, and it's not going to be an easy road. It's going to require a lot of patience, a lot of understanding. So God has given us free will, has given us the power to choose how we will act, to decide to live responsibly or irresponsibly for the sake of ourselves and others. Everything in our tradition, in a life of Torah observance, tells us to choose wisely. The choices we make in our daily actions matter. And now I'm going to hand it back over to Rabbi Wolintz.
And exactly what Rabbi Cella was saying, that it affects our community. So now let's look at a few different teachings in Pirkei Avot that really reflect what community is all about. And of course, we've seen that community is very different today, meaning literally in 2021, than it was 2 years ago. Because community often for Shabbat was, whoever was in your area, that's who you went to shul with. So I'll say, for example, that I live in New Jersey, in Oakhurst, and my rabbi has 2 sisters that live in California. I don't know how often they were able to daven with their brother as the rabbi, but because of the beauty of Zoom, they were all able to join their brother and to watch him on services. And then I feel like I know Becky and Cindy now, as my rabbi, who's also a friend of mine, his sisters could be with us together. I have a simcha coming up in a few weeks, my son's bar mitzvah, and not everyone's able to travel. So we have people who will be joining the Zoom, for example, on Thursday morning from Israel and from all across the United States. So truly, community has changed now that we have a virtual world. Just look at this. I think Rabbi Staffenmacher is teaching right after us from Argentina. So community is different. So how does community help us think about it in terms of what we're taught in Pirkei Avot? So our next slide at this time is a teaching from chapter 2, teaching 5, and then there are 3 continuous ones in chapter 1. So the slide from chapter 2, teaching 5, from Hillel once again. Hillel said, Hillel Omer, Al tifrosh min hatzibur, va'al ta'amin ba'atzmecha ad yomatcha, va'al tadin et chavercha ad shetagia limkomo. Hillel said, do not separate yourself from the community. Do not believe in yourself until the day you die. Do not judge your fellow until you have reached their place. Do not separate yourself from the community. What an ironic term in this day and age during COVID when we couldn't be with other people. We couldn't physically be, but we were probably spiritually together with others, even more biyachad. I'll tell you a short story. One day on Makom B'Yachad, one of our sisters happened to have fallen right before Makom B'Yachad, and she came on the Zoom and she was really bruised. We all looked at her. She was out in Canada. We said, you need help. And we were together with her, helping her. If we hadn't had this ability to be together to learn each day, she would have been separated. Who knows how long she would have gotten help. But we all were able to then contact her daughter who came over to help her. And she may have just said, I'm fine. But we were virtually together to see, you know what, you need help. We had somebody from Charlotte who many of us may have never known. But because of our Makom B'Yachad, our Kehila Kedosha that we created together, where we could have been separated, physically we were, spiritually we were together, and she became our matriarch. And now that she has gone back to Hashem, we miss her, but it was really a way that we could have been separated. If we never got on during that time, think about it, the months that we couldn't leave our houses, but we couldn't separate. We couldn't be alone. We found ways, thank you, Rabbi Heller, my good friend Josh, who created a way for us to daven together. This was not a time that we needed to be separated. We needed to be together. And what happened? We were able to recreate and redefine really what community is all about. And of course, as we reach that time of going forward, now what does community mean? Will we be able to daven with our friends who are in other states still, or we will be just in our own communities? But we can't separate from each other. It's so important. And if any lesson from this year plus is that we can't be separate. Even if we're physically separate, we're spiritually always together. And we found a way to go into each other's homes. You'll see that even Pirkei Avot teaches us that. So let's go on to the next teaching as we wrap up soon. I know we're getting to our time. Yose ben Yoezer ish tzreda omer, yehi ve'etzcha veit ba'ad, l'chachamim veheve mit'abek ba'afar raglehem, veheve shoteh b'tzama et divrehem. Yose ben Yoezer used to say, let your house be a meeting place for sages. Sit in the dust of their feet and drink in their words thirstily. Now, honestly, how many of us before COVID were able to go into each other's homes as much as we have this year? So many of us now know that depending on what artwork is behind our friends, what room they're in. We know who has pets. I love that my children who were virtual, my daughter is still virtual, knows what their teachers' homes are like. And sometimes it's a good thing and sometimes it's a bad thing. But hopefully we were able to visit each other. I haven't been able to go into Rabbi Cella's home, but I could see that. I think the walls are green, like her favorite color. Are they?
Yes.
And I get to go into her home and to study, and that our homes become a meeting place for all of us. So the next teaching is related to this as well. Teaching 1:5. Yose ben Yochanan, ish Yerushalayim omer, Yehe vetzcha patuach lirvacha, vehiyu aniyim b'nei beitecha. Yose ben Yochanan, leader of Jerusalem, used to say, let your house be wide open. Treat the poor as members of your home. So our homes are now wide open because we have this virtual world that we can be together, that people from Germany and Argentina and Israel can all study together and be together. And how wonderful that our ancient text of Pirkei Avot teaches us exactly what's going on in real life today, of that we are all together. If any of you watched the commencement from JTS, for example, last week, or Ziegler last year, you were able to see these wonderful future rabbis and cantors and educators in their very home. Like, I see Rabbi Rubenstein behind her. I think that's the current edition of the Talmud. And it's just amazing to see. And then think about how we went into people's homes. And then sometimes it was like, is that a virtual background, or are those books always in the same place? Or how wonderful that the books that they use most often are right behind them. And then there would be times when you see someone famous and you're like, they have a publication from the conservative movement right behind them, because we're now within their homes. And it's really created a sense of being together, biyachad, all of us. So not to make any of my friends who are going to be teaching the next couple of hours, paranoid, but think about when something's behind you, what you're showing them. That sometimes you have that time when like someone's spouses was behind them and they weren't quite dressed yet. So sometimes it was good and comical, but often it was really not so wonderful to be able to be in each other's homes. So the last teaching here, 1:6, of course, there's so much more to study. Yehoshua ben Perahiah Omer, Aseh lecha rav ukneh lecha chaver, veheveh dan et kol ha'adam lachaf zechut. Joshua ben Perahiah used to say, make a teacher for yourself, acquire a friend for yourself, and judge everyone favorably. So I can tell you, if you caught in the beginning, that when Makom B'Yachad came together, we have everyone participating in it. Our sisters in Women's League teach each other. They taught the Psalms, and we went through all of the 150 Psalms. We teach each other Pirkei Avot. We can all learn and educate each other. Often in a current community, you only have set classes. But now think about it. With the beauty of Zoom, everyone can become a teacher and educate each other. And we have to give each other the benefit of the doubt, the benefit of and judge each other favorably. That's what I mean by the benefit of the doubt. That some people are more comfortable with being on Zoom. Some people aren't. But we really have no idea what other people are going through during this period of time. So there's so many other things to teach. I know we have 3 more minutes in our session, but Rabbi Cella, how have you seen as all the different things that you do in your life with your grandchildren, with your children, with the people you teach, how Zoom has created a different atmosphere of teaching and togetherness?
It's allowed me the opportunity to teach for synagogues far away from my own home. And it's allowed me the opportunity to teach in Makom B'Yachad. And teaching in Makom B'Yachad is what allowed me to come to be working for Women's League. So it's been really a transitional year in a lot of ways. When I started the year, I had different ideas about what I wanted to do with my rabbinate. And I was just coming to the decision that maybe that wasn't what I wanted to do. I needed to turn around and go a different way from a talk that I gave last year. And just as I came to that decision, I got a call from Women's League. So a lot really has come out of Makom B'Yachad, and I feel very blessed.
Very true. It's a situation that we could have been looking at this year of COVID of saying, oh, woe are we? But really, it has created such a different atmosphere of being able to learn and truly bring people together to realize that all of our positive and negative behavior has an effect on each other, that we need to be humble, and that we are just a drop. We don't know how long our time is. So we have to appreciate each and every moment. And that community isn't just the people in your neighborhood necessarily. It's the people on your Zoom screen too, who might be really far away. So I see my friend and colleague in Argentina, that this is an opportunity. I see him every couple of weeks on a Zoom call, that otherwise it would have only been at a rabbinical assembly meeting that I would have seen him. And it really has shown that we can look at a text, an ancient text like Perahiah Avot, and just bring it to life and see that each teaching has something related to what we're living in today. So it's really a wonderful opportunity to study with everyone. I want to thank everyone who's here right now. And I think that we're at our 3:30 mark, Rabbi.
Yasher Koach. Thank you so much, Rabbis Wolintz Fields and Rabbi Cella. I love relearning, turning and turning again, Perahiah Avot, because every single time we learn something that's relevant to now. And thank you so much for everything that you do for Women's League and for conservative Judaism in general.